It began quietly, whispered behind closed palace doors. A faint murmur at first, a hushed suggestion that something inside Clarence House had gone terribly wrong. The kind of talk normally unthinkable within royal walls started gathering momentum. Staff who usually spoke in the polished, restrained language of court suddenly dropped words like disaster and catastrophic. But this wasn't about some minor etiquette slip, nor the kind of fleeting tabloid headline the royals have learned to weather. No, the whispers pointed squarely at Prince Harry, once celebrated as the bright future of the monarchy, now cast as its most unpredictable threat. The thread that was supposed to mend has instead unraveled, and the result is a public feud that feels closer to a family implosion than a royal reconciliation. The meeting that was meant to patch things up between Harry and King Charles should have been a turning point. Carefully described by insiders as a delicate first step back toward peace, it was framed as a cautious father-son moment. After years of public battles, memoirs, Netflix specials, and scathing interviews, Harry had been granted what many considered a rare opportunity. Not everyone thought he deserved it, but the king still offered tea, conversation, and the suggestion that old wounds could perhaps start to heal. Instead, what emerged was chaos. Claims of dark forces lurking in shadows. Paranoia that the palace itself was plotting against him. Suspicions spoken aloud that left courtiers stunned. For Charles, already staggering under the weight of the crown, his health struggles, and a nation's expectations, it was like scooping water into his hands only for Harry to jab holes through his fingers. And this wasn't an isolated slip. This was the pattern. Again and again, Harry has cut himself off from friends, from official duties, from alliances that once defined his purpose. With each outburst, bridges burn to ash until he's left standing on the charred remains of his own making. At this point, some say even the charities once proud to tie themselves to his name now carry scars. Take Centibale, Harry's once promising creation, originally built to uplift vulnerable children. Today, it's remembered by insiders as a public relations disaster zone. His clash with respected chairwoman Sandra Chanda turned brutal, public, and ultimately destructive, leaving the organization in tatters. This isn't just a man with a quick temper. This is a man who, critics argue, repeatedly dismantles the very platforms designed to give him meaning. Yet, what makes this moment unprecedented is the response from the palace. Normally a realm that tilts toward icy understatement, the royals made an exception. Instead of silence, they issued a pointed judgment on Harry's comments, counterproductive. In palace language, that word isn't a shrug. It's a sword wrapped in silk, delivering maximum damage with minimum noise. The late Queen once wielded similar elegance in her unforgettable reply to the Oprah interview. Recollections may vary. Just 4 syllables, yet utterly devastating. So when the King's Circle brands something as counterproductive, what they're truly saying is that it's reckless, damaging beyond the pale. That word was no accident. It was a carefully loaded shot, fired with Charles's consent. For Harry, the story in his head looks very different. He sees himself as the rescuer, the cavalry riding in, the moral compass pointing true north while others in the family falter. To him, returning for meetings with his father was a gesture of responsibility, even a chance to be the reliable one while William and Catherine face medical challenges of their own. But if that's the fairy tale playing in Harry's imagination, the reaction outside those palace gates is the complete opposite. To many, it feels like Dracula offering to donate blood, a gesture that makes no sense given his history. After years of branding his relatives as cold, uncaring, and even racist, then selling those grievances to the highest bidder through books and TV exclusives, his offer of support now sounds less like compassion and more like contradiction. The arrogance alone is staggering. And in Montecito, where Harry insists he's finally free, at peace, and endlessly happy, the loudly repeated claims almost prove the opposite. After all, genuine contentment rarely needs a press release. If you are truly living your best life, why say it every other week? It's like someone constantly posting gym selfies but refusing to step on the scale. The overemphasis only draws more suspicion. Meanwhile, the king's meltdown isn't just a burst of irritation. Those closest to him describe something deeper, an eruption fed by years of swallowing frustrations. Charles is not an impulsive man. He built a reputation on patience, stoicism, dutifulness. For him to snap, for him to authorize a public rebuke of his own son, is as extraordinary as it is humiliating. And make no mistake, reports suggest it was Charles himself who gave his senior aides permission to go on record. That move breaks centuries of tradition. Royals simply do not enter the mud pit of direct confrontation unless forced. Which means behind the velvet curtains, Charles must have felt cornered. This wasn't about correcting a small slip. It was about shutting down a disturbing narrative from Harry that the palace, his own family, is actively plotting against him. Seasoned insiders know that talk is dangerous. Not only because it undermines the institution, but because it feeds the one image Charles cannot allow to spread, a monarchy riddled with internal conspiracies. The paranoia angle is particularly unsettling. Explosive claims about dark forces sabotaging his life have left royal watchers whispering an awkward question. What exactly is going on in Harry's mind? Friends who once partied with him, who saw the wilder stretches of his 20s, point to the years of heavy indulgence. Weed, drinking, and other substances were often whispered about then, and now the suggestion lingers that those chapters may have left lasting marks. Even in his memoir, he proudly confessed to drug use, without considering whether doing so after gaining a US visa might create legal messes or credibility gaps. That confession lives on in every conversation about his judgment. So when Harry begins painting himself as the target of invisible enemies, when he spins tales of sabotage from unseen corners, his critics connect the dots back to those nights and wonder, did the fallout ever end, or has the paranoia hung around, quietly shaping his worldview? The worry has now shifted from scandal to something potentially darker, a growing belief among some observers that Harry is not well. Former friends shake their heads. Once they knew a man who laughed easily, who fought bravely in Afghanistan, who charmed crowds with his down-to-earth nature. That Harry seems gone, replaced by someone locked in cycles of anger and suspicion. He lashes out, withdraws, then lashes out again, severing ties until even his allies are exhausted. And the damage has spread. Centibale, his once hopeful charity, stands now as a bitter example, a reminder that Harry's touch, once associated with compassion, can so easily corrode into conflict. The very platform that should have secured his legacy is now remembered more for internal war than for good works. This is more than a bad headline. It's a character pattern, a man who turns every opportunity into a battlefield. Across the Atlantic, in sunlit Montecito, the Sussex brand shines with carefully managed images. We see chicken coops, strolls through gardens, polished lifestyle photos designed to scream happiness. Yet for every staged smile comes another interview, another statement, another insistence that life is perfect. And here's the irony. Few things reveal insecurity faster than repeating over and over that you're content. The result is a strange loop. The harder Harry pushes the "we're thriving" narrative, the less people actually believe. When he insists his recent trip back to Britain was strictly about supporting charities or reconnecting with family, the denials sound forced, wrapped more like legal disclaimers than natural truth. To the listening public, it feels like another round of frantic damage control instead of sincerity. That is why the word chosen by the palace, counterproductive, landed so heavily. Because it wasn't polite deflection, it was judgment. A ruling. A message hidden in velvet tones that essentially said, "You've sabotaged yourself." Some of Harry's defenders maintain that he doesn't want to rejoin royal life, that he's done with palace responsibilities and perfectly fine in California. But the tension sits underneath. The repeated accusations of sabotage, the insistence that shadowy forces are positioning him as an outsider, all suggest a desperate attempt to stay relevant while avoiding accountability. His script hasn't changed in years. I am the victim, therefore I am absolved. And the public? They've grown tired of it. Inside Buckingham Palace, the mood is pure exasperation. Courtiers trained to maintain stone-faced composure now privately describe Harry as a walking crisis machine, someone unfit to be trusted even with the simplest olive branch. That private meeting with Charles, one that could have been remembered as a rare step toward healing, is now rewritten in gossip and headlines as a humiliation. Sources quietly admit the king regrets allowing it at all, worried that every interaction can, and will, be spun into more stories. For an institution that thrives on quiet discretion, Harry has become the relentless loudspeaker. And that kind of volatility is not something the monarchy can accommodate. Meanwhile, William has kept to the shadows, or so it seems. His focus remains firmly on his wife's health, his children, and the crown that one day will be his responsibility. But behind closed doors, those closest to him say there's a quiet sense of vindication. For years, he warned that his brother's impulses would lead only to chaos. He saw the pattern clearly before most. The reckless decisions, the insatiable hunger for public validation, the inability to control his tongue. He voiced it, often at personal cost. Now the results are on full display. For William, there is no satisfaction in watching Harry stumble, but there is confirmation, the weary realization that his concerns proved accurate. He also knows one tragic truth. His father's soft spot for Harry, his willingness to indulge, has come at a painful cost. The public's reaction now wavers between sympathy and anger. Some still see the boy who once walked behind Diana's coffin, who fought in Afghanistan, who lit up crowds with candor and humor. They look at him now and grieve the transformation into a man battling ghosts, fighting phantoms, creating enemies where none exist. They whisper that this is a tragedy, a prince consumed by paranoia and his own history. But others, far less gentle, dismiss him outright. To them, Harry is entitlement embodied, a millionaire railing from a California mansion while ordinary families scrape by. And when he cries sabotage, it rings absurd against his privilege. Each denial from his camp arrives wrapped in painfully formal press releases, sounding more like a law firm's rebuttals than the voice of an authentic human being. Consider the debacle with the Sun. When the newspaper revealed details of his private meeting with Charles, Harry's team erupted with fury, branding the report lies. But in the same breath, they confirmed specific details, like the exchange of gifts, which only reinforced that the paper had truth on its side. To Palace veterans, it was a rookie blunder. You don't pick a fight with an establishment that has perfected precision messaging across centuries. And you certainly don't contradict yourself mid-denial. The palace, however, does not slip. Their words are deliberate crafted. So when they stamp Harry's comments as counterproductive, it is not clumsy phrasing. It's a finely calibrated weapon, meant to wound without declaring war. Harry, however, never seems to notice the subtlety. He roars back each time, and every roar only proves the palace's quiet point. The long-term damage could not be clearer. Whatever faint chances Harry once had of resuming a royal role, even in a limited capacity, have now evaporated. The late Queen had already ruled out any half-in, half-out approach. Charles, now burdened by health struggles and enraged by accusations of palace sabotage, is in no position to reopen that door. Future invitations to official events will be rare, stripped back, carefully stage-managed, if they appear at all. Because in royal life, trust is oxygen. And once that oxygen is gone, it seldom, if ever, returns. Here lies the deepest irony. Harry had an opening. However narrow, however fragile, he had a moment with his father, a final chance to prove that he could keep confidence, that he could respect privacy. But that door is now closing. Instead of reconciliation came suspicion. Instead of peace came paranoia. The narrative has hardened into one line. A king too occupied to indulge his volatile son, a brother resigned to distance, and a prince whose greatest enemy is now his own voice. The dynasty will march forward. The crown as an institution always does. But Harry? Harry stands outside the gates. Convinced he was helping, he has instead written himself out of the story. And in doing so, has become the author of his own exile.